What if the person you trust most is the one quietly destroying you? My name is Loretta Mayfield. I'm 68 years old, and for 6 months, my son drugged me every Friday night. I know that because I stopped swallowing the pills. And what I discovered when I stayed awake changed everything I thought I knew about family, love, and survival. This isn't a story about what could happen. This is about what did happen. In my apartment, in Queens, New York, to me. The first time I pretended to swallow that pill, my hands were shaking so hard I thought he'd notice. But Terrence just smiled at me, that same smile I'd seen 1,000 times growing up, and handed me a glass of water. I tilted my head back. I swallowed air. I opened my mouth to prove it was gone. He believed me. And that night, when I heard footsteps outside my door at 2 in the morning, I understood something that nearly stopped my heart. My son wasn't checking on me. He was waiting for me to be unconscious. I don't know when it started. I don't know the exact moment my only child decided I was worth more to him asleep than awake. But I know how it felt to lie in my own bed, pretending to be knocked out, listening to my son and his wife whispering on the other side of my door. I know what it sounds like when someone you raise says your name in the dark, not out of love, but out of calculation. And I know what it takes to look at the person you gave everything to and realize they're willing to take the one thing you have left. This is that story. It doesn't start with pills. It starts years before that, with sacrifice and hope and the belief that blood always means safety. I was wrong. And by the time I figured that out, I was already in danger.
I need you to understand who Terrence was before all of this, because the boy I raised, the one who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who cried when his goldfish died, who kissed my forehead every night before bed, that boy wouldn't have done this. Or maybe he would have. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. Terrence came into this world during a thunderstorm in July 1987. His father, Marcus, was there for the birth, but by the time Terrence turned 9, Marcus was gone. No explanation, no forwarding address, just an empty side of the bed and a son who stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. So I became both, mother and father, provider and protector. I worked 2 jobs, one as a social worker during the day, another cleaning offices at night. I missed school plays because I was working. I missed birthdays because I was trying to keep the lights on. But I never missed telling Terrence I loved him. I made sure of that. He grew up quiet. Not shy exactly, just observant. The kind of kid who listened more than he spoke, who felt things deeply but kept them locked inside. I used to think that was strength. Now I wonder if it was just him learning how to hide. Terrence wasn't the type to get into trouble. He didn't fight. He didn't steal. He graduated high school with decent grades and got a job at a logistics company. Nothing glamorous, but steady, safe. But there was always something about him that worried me. He was too trusting, too eager to please, the kind of person who'd give away his last dollar if someone asked nicely enough. I thought it was kindness. I didn't realize it was weakness. And then he met Naya. The first time Terrence brought her to my apartment, I knew. I can't explain how. It wasn't anything she said or did. It was the way she looked at my home, not like a guest, like an appraiser. Her eyes moved over the furniture, the photos on the wall, the small china cabinet my mother left me. She smiled when she shook my hand, but the smile never reached her eyes. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Polished, well-dressed, the kind of woman who knew how to present herself. But there was a coldness underneath, a calculation. Terrence was 29 when they got married. I wasn't invited to help plan the wedding. I wasn't asked for my opinion on anything. I showed up, smiled in the photos, and watched my son slip further away from me. After the wedding, things changed fast. Naya convinced Terrence they needed space to build their life together. She suggested they move into my late sister's brownstone in Brooklyn, the one I inherited after she passed. It needed repairs, sure, but it was still worth something. A lot, actually. I said yes, because I wanted Terrence to have stability. I didn't charge them rent. I figured it was an investment in their future, in his future. But every time I visited, something was missing. First, it was small things. A painting my sister loved, an antique lamp from the living room, my grandmother's jewelry box, the one with the tiny brass lock. I'd ask about it and Terrence would shrug. "Oh, Ma, we put it in storage. We're decluttering." Naya would nod along, barely looking at me. Less is more, you know? I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe my son wasn't lying to me. But then I'd come back a month later and something else would be gone. I started taking notes, writing down what I remembered, comparing my memories to what I saw. I wasn't imagining it. They were taking things, slowly, piece by piece. And when I brought it up, Terrence looked at me like I was losing my mind. "Ma, maybe you're just forgetting. You've been stressed." That's when I should have known. That's when I should have pulled back, set boundaries, protected myself. But I didn't. Because he was my son, and I thought love was enough to keep us honest.
The Friday dinners started in March. Terrence called me on a Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded warmer than it had in months. "Ma, I want us to spend more time together, as a family. Can you come over for dinner this Friday?" I remember how my chest filled with hope. Maybe things were getting better. Maybe Naya was softening. Maybe my son was finding his way back to me. I said yes immediately. That first Friday, I showed up at 6 with a bottle of wine and a homemade sweet potato pie, Terrence's favorite since he was a boy. Naya answered the door in a silk blouse and jeans, her smile tight and professional. She thanked me for the pie, but never touched it. Dinner was tense. Naya barely spoke to me. Terrence overcompensated, asking questions about my week, laughing too loud at things that weren't funny. I could feel the strain in the room, thick and uncomfortable. After we ate, Terrence brought out a cup of tea. "Chamomile," he said. "It'll help you sleep better, Ma. You've been looking tired." I wasn't tired, but I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to ruin what felt like the first normal evening we'd had in months. So I drank it. Half a cup. Maybe less. By the time I got back to my apartment in Queens, my head felt heavy. My limbs moved like they were underwater. I barely made it to my bed before the world around me turned soft and blurry. I didn't wake up until 2 in the afternoon the next day. When I finally opened my eyes, I felt wrong, disoriented, like I'd been pulled out of a dream I couldn't remember. My mouth was dry, my body ached. I told myself it was just exhaustion. Maybe I'd been pushing myself too hard. Maybe I needed to slow down. But the next Friday, Terrence called again. "Same time, Ma?" And I went. This time, the tea came earlier, right after dinner. Terrence set it in front of me with that same gentle smile. "Drink up. It's good for you." I drank it, and again, I collapsed into a sleep so deep it felt like drowning. This became the pattern every Friday. Dinner, tea, a sleep that swallowed me whole. By the 4th week, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. I'd wake up on Saturday afternoons with bruises on my arms, small ones, faint, but there.
I didn't remember bumping into anything. One morning, I found my bedroom window cracked open. I never opened that window. It stuck. It was hard to move. But there it was, open just enough to let in the cold. Another time, I woke up and my purse was on the kitchen counter instead of the chair where I always left it. I started questioning myself. Was I sleepwalking? Was my memory going? I didn't want to believe something was wrong. I didn't want to admit I was scared. But then came the night I confronted Terrence. It was a Saturday. I called him in the morning, my voice shaky. Terrence, I need to talk to you. I've been feeling strange after our dinners, really strange, dizzy, confused. It's scaring me. There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice came back, smooth and calm. Ma, you're stressing yourself out. You're getting older. Your body's just slowing down. That's normal. But the bruises, you probably bumped into something and forgot. It happens. And I feel like I'm being drugged. Drugged? He laughed. Not a mean laugh, a concerned one. Ma, come on. You think I'd hurt you? I didn't answer. Look, he said, his tone shifting to something softer. You've been anxious lately. I can tell. That's why Naya and I got you those supplements. They're helping you relax. That's all. Supplements? My stomach dropped. Yeah, the pills we've been giving you. All natural. They help with sleep and stress. I didn't remember him giving me pills. I thought it was just tea. Where did you get them? I asked. Don't worry about it, Ma. They're safe. Trust me. Trust me. Those two words echoed in my head long after we hung up. The next Friday, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see for myself. Maybe I was still hoping I was wrong. After dinner, Terrence brought out a small bottle. White pills. No label. Take one of these, Ma. It'll help you sleep deep tonight. He handed me the pill in a glass of water. I looked at him. Really looked at him. His face was calm, kind even, but something in his eyes, something I couldn't name, made my heart race. I put the pill on my tongue. I took a sip of water. I tilted my head back. And then I tucked the pill under my tongue and smiled. Good? He asked. I nodded. He smiled back. Good. Get home safe, Ma. The moment I got to my car, I spit the pill into a tissue and wrapped it carefully. I didn't know what it was, but I knew what it wasn't. It wasn't helping me. I kept that pill in a plastic baggie on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I'd walk past it every morning and feel my stomach turn. Part of me wanted to throw it away, pretend I never saw it, go back to believing my son was just trying to help me sleep. But another part of me, the part that had survived Marcus leaving, that had worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, that had raised the child alone in Brooklyn, that part knew better. So I made a decision. The next Friday, I was going to test him. When Terrence called to confirm dinner, I kept my voice light, normal. I'll be there at 6. Great, Ma. Nia's making your favorite. Nia hadn't made anything for me in 2 years, but I didn't say that. I showed up on time, smiled, ate quietly, laughed at Terrence's jokes even though my hands were shaking under the table. When he brought out the pill and the glass of water, I felt my throat tighten. Here you go, Ma, same as always. I took the pill, placed it on my tongue, brought the glass to my lips, took a small sip, swallowed air. Then I opened my mouth and showed him. Empty. Good girl, he said, patting my shoulder. Good girl. Like I was a child, like I was obedient. I forced a smile and left 20 minutes later, saying I was tired. The pill was still tucked under my tongue. When I got home, I spit it into my hand and stared at it.
It was larger than I remembered, chalky. The coating had started to dissolve from my saliva. I placed it next to the first one. 2 pills, 2 Fridays. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I stayed awake. I didn't get into my pajamas. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't turn off the lights. I sat on my couch in the dark, fully dressed, waiting. For what? I didn't know. But I had a feeling deep in my bones that something was going to happen. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. I kept my eyes on the door, my hands folded in my lap, my breathing slow and controlled. At 2:17 a.m., my buzzer rang. Once, then again. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't move. The buzzer rang a third time, longer this time, insistent. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway, right outside my door, and voices, low, urgent, whispering. I held my breath. She should be out cold by now. Terrence's voice, frustrated. I told you to take her keys. Nia's voice, sharp, annoyed. He'd notice if they were gone. Then what's the point of giving her the pills if we can't even get in? My blood turned to ice. Push the door, Nia hissed. I heard the doorknob rattle, once, twice. I sat frozen on the couch, my body locked in place, my mind screaming. Forget it, Terrence muttered. We'll try next week. This is taking too long. I know. Just let's go. Their footsteps faded down the hallway. I didn't move for another 10 minutes. When I finally stood, my legs almost gave out. I walked to the door and pressed my ear against it. Silence. I checked the locks. Both were still secure. But that didn't matter, because my son had a key. I knew he did. I just didn't know he was using it like this. I sat back down on the couch and stared at the door until the sun came up. The next morning, my phone rang at 9. Terrence. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Hey, Ma. His voice was light, casual. I stopped by last night to check on you. You didn't answer. Everything okay? My throat felt tight. I was asleep. Oh, well, I was worried. You seemed really tired when you left. I'm fine, Terrence. Good, that's good. Just wanted to make sure. I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't believe a single word my son said. I spent the rest of that weekend replaying everything in my mind. The tea, the pills, the Friday dinners that started out of nowhere, the missing items from the brownstone, the bruises, the open window. It wasn't random. It was a pattern. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. They were trying to get into my apartment when they thought I'd be unconscious. But why? What were they looking for? I went through my apartment room by room, checking drawers, closets, cabinets. I didn't have much. I wasn't wealthy. I didn't keep cash hidden under the mattress. I didn't own jewelry worth stealing. But then I opened my bedroom dresser, the second drawer, the one where I kept important documents. Birth certificates, social security cards, insurance papers, and the deed to the brownstone. My heart stopped. The deed. The house was worth over $1 million, maybe more, depending on the market. It was in my name, legally mine. But if something happened to me, if I died or if I was declared incompetent, Terrence would inherit it. All of it. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at that piece of paper and felt something crack open inside me. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about family. It wasn't even about helping me sleep. This was about money. And my son, my only son,
The boy I raised, the one I sacrificed everything for, was willing to drug me to get it. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. Long enough for the light outside to change. Long enough for the tears to dry on my face. When I finally stood, I felt different. Not broken, not defeated. Clear. I knew what I had to do. But I needed help. I called my oldest friend, Denise. We'd known each other since grade school. She lived in Harlem now, but we still talked every week. "Loretta," she said, "what's wrong?" I told her everything. The dinners, the pills, the visit in the middle of the night, the deed. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she said quietly, "Loretta, that boy is trying to hurt you." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real. "I know," I whispered. "You need to protect yourself right now." "I don't know how." "We'll figure it out. But first, you need proof, real proof, not just pills in a baggie." She was right. "What do I do?" "Get a camera, a small one. Put it somewhere in your apartment where it can see the door. And the next time they come, you'll have everything you need." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay. And Loretta." "Yeah?" "Don't go back there alone. If they're willing to drug you, there's no telling what else they'll do." Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. That week, I went to a store in Manhattan and bought a small security camera, the kind you stick on a shelf. It looked like a clock. I set it up facing my front door and tested it on my phone. Clear picture, good angle. Now all I had to do was wait for Friday.
Friday came slower than I wanted it to. Every day that week felt stretched out, like time was moving through mud. I went through my routines, grocery shopping, paying bills, watering the plants on my windowsill, but my mind was somewhere else. I kept thinking about what Denise said. If they're willing to drug you, there's no telling what else they'll do. I wanted to believe she was wrong. I wanted to believe there was still some part of Terrence that would stop before things went too far. But I couldn't afford to believe that anymore. On Thursday night, Terrence called. "Still good for tomorrow, Ma?" "Of course." "Great. 6 o'clock. I'll be there." I hung up and stared at the camera disguised as a clock on my shelf. The little red light blinked once, confirming it was recording. I tested the app on my phone again. The feed was clear. The angle was perfect. Anyone walking through that door would be caught on camera. I barely slept that night. When Friday evening came, I dressed carefully. Not too formal, not too casual. I wanted to look the same as I always did. Normal, unsuspecting. I drove to Brooklyn and parked outside the brownstone. The lights were on inside. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Then I got out and walked to the door. Terrence answered with a smile. "Hey, Ma, come in." The house smelled like garlic and roasted chicken. Naya was in the kitchen, her back to me, stirring something on the stove. "Smells good," I said, keeping my voice even. "Naya's trying a new recipe," Terrence said, closing the door behind me. Naya glanced over her shoulder. "Hope you like it." Her tone was flat, polite but empty. We sat down to eat. The food was fine. I barely tasted it. Every bite felt mechanical. I smiled when I was supposed to smile, nodded when I was supposed to nod. Terrence talked about work, something about a promotion he was hoping for. I didn't hear most of it. My mind was counting down the minutes until he brought out the pill.
At 7:45, he stood and walked to the kitchen. When he came back, he was holding a glass of water and a small white pill on a napkin. "Here you go, Ma." I looked at the pill, then at him. His face was calm, kind even, like he was doing me a favor. I picked up the pill and placed it on my tongue. I took a sip of water, tilted my head back, and then, just like last time, I tucked it under my tongue and swallowed nothing. I opened my mouth to show him. He smiled. "Good. You'll sleep great tonight." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him and ask him what happened to the boy who used to kiss my forehead goodnight. But I didn't. I just smiled back. 20 minutes later, I left, drove home, parked in my usual spot. But I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my car and called Denise. "I'm outside my building," I said. "I took the pill. Well, I pretended to. They think I'm going to be knocked out in an hour." "Good," Denise said. "Now get out of there. Come to my place. We'll watch the feed together." "What if nothing happens?" "Then we'll know they're not coming tonight. But if they do show up, you need to be far away from that apartment. You hear me?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay." I drove to Harlem. Denise lived on the 4th floor of a walk-up with a view of the street. She had already made tea by the time I got there. We sat on her couch, my phone propped up on the coffee table, the camera feed open. The apartment looked empty, still. The clock on the shelf blinked quietly in the corner of the screen. "How long do we wait?" I asked. "As long as it takes." The minutes crawled by. 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I started to think maybe I was wrong. Maybe they weren't coming. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. But then at 10:47 p.m., the feed shifted. The door opened. My breath caught. Terrence stepped inside first, moving quickly, quietly. Naya followed, closing the door behind her. They didn't turn on the lights. They moved through my apartment like they'd done it before, like they knew exactly where to go. Denise leaned forward. "Oh my God!" I couldn't speak. Terrence walked straight to my bedroom. Naya stayed near the door, keeping watch. The camera couldn't see into the bedroom, but I didn't need it to. I knew what he was looking for. He was in there for maybe 2 minutes. Then he came back out, shaking his head. "It's not here," he said, his voice low but clear on the feed. "What do you mean it's not here?" Naya's voice was sharp. "She moved it?" "I don't know. Maybe she put it somewhere else." Naya cursed under her breath. "We're running out of time, Terrence. If she figures out what we're doing..." "She won't. You don't know that. She trusts me." Naya laughed. It was cold, bitter. "She won't for much longer. You need to handle this." "I am handling it." "No, you're stalling. If you can't get that deed, then we need to figure out another way." "Like what?" Naya didn't answer right away. She walked closer to the camera, her face coming into full view. And then she said something that made my entire body go cold. "We need to stop waiting for her to die. We need to make sure she does." Terrence froze. "What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about. One bad fall, one accident. She's old. No one's going to ask questions." "Naya, I'm not..." "You're not what? You're already drugging her. What's the difference?" Terrence didn't answer. Naya stepped closer to him. "You want that house or not?" "Of course I do." "Then stop being weak." There was a long silence. Then Naya turned and walked toward the bedroom again. "I'm checking the other drawers. Maybe she hid it somewhere else." The camera captured her disappearing into the room. Terrence stood in the middle of my living room, his hands on his hips, staring at the floor. And for a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something in his face. Guilt, maybe. Hesitation. But then Naya called out from the bedroom, "Found something!" And he walked toward her voice without looking back. They stayed for another 10 minutes. I watched them go through my things, opening drawers, rifling through papers, checking under the bed. When they finally left, Naya paused at the door. She looked around the apartment one last time. Then she leaned close to Terrence and whispered something I couldn't quite hear on the recording. But I saw her smile. And I knew in that moment that my son wasn't in charge. He never had been. Naya was. The door closed. The apartment was empty again. Denise and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "You can't go back there, Loretta." "I know." "You need to call the police." "I know." But even as I said it, my hands were shaking. Because calling the police meant admitting it was real. It meant my son would be arrested. It meant the end of whatever was left of our family. But Denise was right. I couldn't go back. Not to the apartment, not to the Friday dinners, not to pretending everything was okay. So I made the call.
The officer on the phone sounded tired. It was late, almost midnight, and I could hear background noise on his end, voices, radio static. "What's the nature of your emergency?" "My son is breaking into my apartment," I said. My voice sounded strange, too calm, like I was reporting someone else's life. "Is he there now?" "No, he left, but I have it on video, him and his wife. They've been drugging me. They're trying to steal my property." There was a pause. "Ma'am, are you in a safe location?" "Yes, I'm at a friend's house." "Okay, stay there. I'm going to send someone to take your statement." 2 officers showed up at Denise's apartment an hour later. A man and a woman, both young, both looking at me like I might be confused. I wasn't confused. I showed them the video, played it twice, explained the pills, the Friday dinners, the missing items from the brownstone, the deed. The female officer took notes. The male officer watched the screen carefully. "Do you still have the pills?" he asked. I pulled the baggie out of my purse. 2 pills, still wrapped in tissue. He held it up to the light. "We'll need to test these." "They're not vitamins," I said flatly. "No, ma'am, I don't think they are." The female officer looked at me. "Mrs. Mayfield, based on what you've shown us, we have enough to make an arrest, but we need your cooperation for the next step." "What do you need me to do?" "We need to catch them in the act, on your property, with intent." I understood what she was saying. "You want me to go back. Not alone. We'll be there, waiting. But they need to believe you're unconscious. They need to try again." My stomach turned. "When?" "Next Friday." Denise shook her head. "Absolutely not. That's too dangerous." The male officer spoke gently. "We'll have officers inside the apartment, hidden. The moment they enter, we move. Mrs. Mayfield won't be in any danger." "You can't promise that," Denise said. "No," I said quietly, "but it's the only way." Denise turned to me, her face tight with worry. "Loretta, I have to do this. If I don't, they'll keep trying, and next time, I might not see it coming." The officers left an hour later with the pills and a copy of the video. I stayed at Denise's place for the rest of the week. Every night, I barely slept. I kept replaying Naya's words in my head. We need to stop waiting for her to die. On Thursday, Terrence called, right on schedule. "Hey, Ma, you good for tomorrow?" I closed my eyes, took a breath.
Of course. Great. Same time. I'll be there. I hung up before he could say anything else. That night, I met with the officers again. They walked me through the plan. I would go to dinner, take the pill, pretend to take it just like before, leave at my usual time, drive home. But this time, I wouldn't stay. I'd park my car in the usual spot, walk into the building, and then leave through the back exit. The officers would already be inside my apartment, positioned in the bedroom and the bathroom, out of sight. When Terrence and Nia entered, they'd be arrested immediately. It sounded simple, but nothing about this felt simple. Friday came. I got dressed the same way I always did, drove the same route, parked in the same spot outside the brownstone. When I walked up to the door, my hands were shaking. Terrence answered with his usual smile. "Hey, Ma." I stepped inside. The dinner was quieter than usual. Nia barely looked at me. Terrence seemed distracted, checking his phone more than once. At 7:50, he brought out the pill. I stared at it for a long moment. He tilted his head. "You okay, Ma?" I looked up at him, really looked at him. At the face I used to kiss goodnight, the boy I used to read bedtime stories to, the son I thought I knew. "I'm fine," I said. I took the pill, placed it on my tongue, sipped air, opened my mouth. Terrence smiled. "Good. Sleep well tonight." I left 20 minutes later, drove home in silence, parked, walked into the building, took the stairs to my floor. The officers were waiting in the stairwell. "You ready?" the male officer asked. I nodded. He unlocked my apartment door. I stepped inside just enough to make it look like I'd come home, then slipped back out through the back service exit. Denise was waiting for me in her car, 2 blocks away. I got in, pulled the door shut. "Now we wait," she said. I opened the camera app on my phone. The feed showed my empty apartment. The officers were hidden. The door was locked from the inside, but Terrence had a key. We sat in silence. At 2:14 a.m., the door opened. Terrence stepped in first. Nia followed. They moved the same way they had the week before, quick, quiet, confident. Terrence walked straight to the dresser drawer. Nia stayed near the door. And then, just as Terrence reached for the dresser drawer, the officers stepped out. "NYPD, hands where we can see them." Nia screamed. Terrence froze, his hand still on the drawer. "Mr. and Mrs. Mayfield, you're arrested for breaking and entering, attempted theft, and possession of a controlled substance with intent to harm." Nia's face twisted with rage. "This is bullshit. We have a key. This is family property." "This apartment belongs to Loretta Mayfield. You have no legal right to be here." Terrence's voice cracked. "Where's my mother?" The male officer cuffed him. "She's safe, which is more than you can say for yourself." Nia tried to pull away. "Let me go. We didn't do anything." "We have you on video," the female officer said. "Multiple entries, unlawful search, and we have the pills you've been giving Mrs. Mayfield. Sedatives, prescription grade, illegal without a medical license." Nia went silent. Terrence's legs buckled. The officer caught him before he fell. "Ma," Terrence whispered, his eyes searching the apartment. "Where are you?" I watched from the car, 2 blocks away. My hand pressed against my mouth. Denise reached over and held my other hand. On the screen, they led Terrence and Nia out in handcuffs. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe.
I didn't go to the precinct that night. I couldn't.
The officers said I could come in the next morning to give a full statement. They had everything they needed. The video, the pills, the illegal entry. Terrence and Naya were being processed, charged, held. I should have felt relief, maybe even victory. But all I felt was hollow. Denise drove me back to her apartment. I sat on her couch, staring at the wall, replaying the last image I'd seen on my phone. My son in handcuffs, his face pale, his voice breaking as he called out for me. "You did the right thing," Denise said softly. I nodded, but I didn't believe it yet. The next morning, I went to the precinct. The same two officers met me in a small room with fluorescent lights and a table that had seen better days. "Mrs. Mayfield," the female officer said, sitting across from me, "we need to ask you a few more questions, and there's something you should know." I folded my hands in my lap. "What is it?" "We tested the pills. They're a benzodiazepine, prescription sedative. High dose. Enough to knock someone out for hours. Maybe longer, depending on body weight and tolerance." My chest tightened. "Where did they get them?" The male officer leaned forward. "That's what we wanted to ask you. Your son claims he didn't know what they were. He says his wife told him they were herbal supplements, that she ordered them online." I stared at him. "You're telling me he didn't know?" "That's what he's saying. And honestly, Mrs. Mayfield, we're not sure he's lying." The female officer pulled out a folder. "We interviewed them separately. Your son broke down almost immediately. He admitted to entering your apartment. He admitted to looking for the deed. But he insists he didn't know the pills were dangerous. He thought they were just sleep aids." "And you believe him?" She hesitated. "What we believe doesn't matter. What matters is what we can prove. And right now, the evidence points to Mrs. Naya Mayfield as the primary orchestrator." I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief, not anger, just clarity. "She planned this," I said quietly. "We think so, yes. Your son's phone records show that she was the one researching sedatives. She was the one who made contact with an unlicensed online pharmacy. She was the one who pushed him to get the key copied." The male officer opened another page in the folder. "He also told us something else. He said the whole thing started after she found out the brownstone was in your name. She wanted him to ask you to sign it over. When you refused, I never refused. He never asked." The officer nodded. "Exactly. She told him you'd already said no, that you didn't trust him, that you were planning to sell the house and cut him out." My throat tightened. "That's not true." "We know, but he believed her. And once he believed it, she convinced him that the only way to secure his future, their future, was to take matters into his own hands." I sat back in my chair, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Terrence wasn't evil. He was weak. And Naya had found that weakness and weaponized it. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Still in holding. She's not talking." Lawyered up immediately. "But your son—" The officer paused. "He's asking to see you." My heart lurched. "No. You don't have to, but we thought you should know." I shook my head. "I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever." The officers gave me copies of the reports, the test results, the video evidence. They told me I'd need to come back for a court hearing, that there would be a trial, that I'd have to testify. I said I understood. But when I left the precinct, I felt like I was floating. disconnected from my own body. Denise picked me up outside. How'd it go? She did it, I said, staring straight ahead. Naya. She planned everything. Terrence was just following her. Denise pulled into traffic. Does that make it better or worse? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Over the next few days, I learned more. Naya had debts, credit card bills she'd hidden from Terrence, a failed business venture she'd sunk money into without telling him. She'd been looking for a way out. And when she found out about the brownstone, she saw an opportunity. She'd isolated Terrence from me slowly, convinced him I didn't respect him, that I was controlling, that I would never let him have what was rightfully his. She planted doubts, watered them, let them grow. And by the time she suggested the pills, Terrence was already so far gone he couldn't see what was happening. He thought he was protecting his future. He didn't realize he was destroying his family. But here's the thing. Knowing Naya manipulated him didn't erase what he did. He still came into my apartment in the middle of the night. He still drugged me. He still looked through my things. He still chose her over me. And that's the part I couldn't forgive yet. 2 weeks after the arrest, I received a letter. It came to Denise's address. I still hadn't gone back to my apartment. The return address was the city jail. Terrence. I held the envelope for a long time before I opened it. Inside was 3 pages. Handwritten. His handwriting was messy, rushed, like he'd written it in one sitting without stopping. Ma, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll ever want to hear from me again, but I need to try. I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you were going to leave me with nothing. Naya told me you were planning to sell the house, that you didn't trust me, that you thought I was a failure. And I believed her. I believed her because I was scared. Scared that she'd leave me. Scared that I'd lose everything. Scared that I'd end up like Dad, alone and worthless. I know now that she lied. I know she used me. But that doesn't change what I did. I came into your home. I drugged you. I betrayed you. And I don't know how to live with that. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve to ask. But I need you to know that I love you. I always have. Even when I was doing those terrible things, I still loved you. I just loved her more. And that was my biggest mistake. I'm sorry, Ma. I'm so sorry. Terrence. I read it 3 times, and then I folded it up, put it back in my purse. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired.
The trial happened 4 months later. I sat in the courtroom wearing a navy blue dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. Denise sat beside me. My lawyer sat on my other side, a woman named Patricia who'd been recommended by a friend. Terrence sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. He looked thinner, older. His hair had grown out and he kept his eyes down most of the time. Nia sat beside him, her face blank, her posture rigid. She didn't look at me once. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically, the video evidence, the pill analysis, the financial motive, the unlawful entries, the intent to harm. It was all there, clear, undeniable. Terrence pled guilty to breaking and entering, attempted theft, and conspiracy.
His lawyer argued that he'd been manipulated, that he'd acted under duress, that he deserved leniency. The judge listened, then sentenced him to 3 years with the possibility of parole after 18 months. Mia pled not guilty. She took the stand and claimed she had no knowledge of the pills, that Terrence had acted alone, that she'd only accompanied him to my apartment because she was worried about me. The prosecutor tore her story apart piece by piece. Phone records, financial records, text messages where she'd explicitly discussed getting the old lady out of the way. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 7 years. No early parole. When the gavel came down, Nia finally looked at me. Her face was hard, cold. No regret, no remorse, just anger that she'd been caught. I stared back at her until she looked away. After the trial, I met with my lawyer to finalize the legal protections on my property. The deed to the brownstone was transferred into an irrevocable trust. Terrence's name was removed from my will. Everything I owned would go to a charity of my choosing when I died. He'd get nothing. Not because I hated him, but because I couldn't trust him anymore. Patricia walked me through every document, every clause, every signature. "This protects you completely," she said. "No one can contest this. No one can claim they're owed anything." I signed the last page and set the pen down. "Good." She looked at me for a moment. "How are you doing? Really?" I thought about it. "I'm surviving." That's more than a lot of people could say. Maybe. I hired a locksmith to change every lock in my apartment. I installed 2 more cameras, one outside my door, one in the living room. I updated my emergency contacts. I made sure Denise had a key. I wasn't taking chances anymore. The first night I spent back in my apartment, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Every creak in the hallway sent my heart racing. But by the second night, it got easier. And by the end of the week, I felt like I was home again. Not the same home. Not the safe, innocent place it used to be, but mine. Protected. Secure. I started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Green who specialized in family trauma. She didn't judge. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. And slowly, very slowly, I started to process what had happened. The betrayal, the fear, the grief. Because that's what it was. Grief. Not for Terrence the man, but for Terrence the boy, the son I thought I had, the relationship I thought we'd built. That version of him was gone. Maybe he'd never existed at all. And I had to mourn that. Dr. Green told me something in one of our sessions that stuck with me. You can forgive someone and still choose not to let them back into your life. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about releasing the hold they have on your peace. I thought about that a lot. I didn't know if I'd forgiven Terrence yet, but I knew I didn't want to carry the weight of his choices anymore. 3 months after the trial, I got another letter. This time it was shorter. "Ma, I heard about the trust. I understand. I'm not asking you to change your mind. I just wanted you to know that I get it. I don't blame you. I'm in a program here, therapy. It's helping. I'm starting to see how messed up I was, how blind. I don't know if we'll ever talk again, but if we do, I want to be someone you can be proud of, or at least someone you don't have to be afraid of. I love you, Ma. I know I don't have the right to say that anymore, but it's true. Terrence." I folded the letter, and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either.
A year passed. Then another. Life didn't go back to normal, but it found a new rhythm. I kept working with Dr. Green. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. I joined a book club in my neighborhood. I started volunteering at a community center in Queens, helping other women navigate legal issues and family conflict. Turns out, my story wasn't unique. A lot of people had been betrayed by the ones they loved most, and a lot of them needed to hear that survival was possible. I never went back to the brownstone. I sold it 8 months after the trial. The buyers were a young couple with a baby on the way. They had kind faces. They talked about the renovations they wanted to do, the memories they wanted to build. I signed the papers and walked away without looking back. The money from the sale went into a trust for a scholarship fund, for single mothers trying to finish their education, for women rebuilding their lives after loss. I named it after my mother, not after Terrence. Denise threw me a small birthday party when I turned 70. Just a few people, cake, wine, laughter. At one point, someone asked me if I'd heard from Terrence. I said no. And that was true. He'd been released on parole 6 months earlier. I'd gotten a notification in the mail, but he hadn't tried to contact me. I didn't know where he was, I didn't know what he was doing, and honestly, I didn't need to. Some people think that's cold, that family should always find a way back to each other, that forgiveness means reconciliation. But I learned something through all of this. You can love someone from a distance. You can wish them well without letting them close. You can forgive without forgetting. And you can choose yourself without guilt. Every Friday night now, I make myself a cup of tea. Chamomile, the real kind, the kind that actually helps you sleep. I sit by my window and watch the lights of the city flicker in the distance. Sometimes I think about Terrence, about the boy he was, about the man he became. And sometimes I think about myself, about the woman I was before all this, about the woman I am now. I'm not the same person. I'm quieter, more careful. I don't trust as easily as I used to, but I'm also stronger, more certain. I know my worth now. I know my boundaries. And I know that surviving something like this doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're awake. One Friday night, about 2 years after the trial, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ma? My breath caught. Terrence. His voice was different, softer, hesitant. It's me. I know I shouldn't be calling, but I wanted to hear your voice, just once. I didn't say anything. He continued, I'm doing better. I have a job. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to be better. Silence. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry and that I think about you every day. I closed my eyes. I have to go, I said quietly. Okay, I understand. I hung up and I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hand. Here's what I learned. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. DNA doesn't guarantee love. And family, real family, isn't about who you're born to, it's about who shows up when things fall apart. Terrence was my son. I carried him. I raised him. I sacrificed for him. But when it mattered most, he chose someone else. And I had to choose myself. That doesn't make me cold. It makes me human. Because love isn't supposed to hurt you. It's not supposed to put you in danger. And it's definitely not supposed to require you to ignore every instinct screaming at you to protect yourself. I don't know if Terrence and I will ever speak again. Maybe one day, years from now, we'll sit across from each other and have a conversation that feels real, that feels safe. Or maybe we won't. And I've made peace with that. Because I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still living my life on my terms. Every Friday night now, I sit by my window with my tea and my thoughts, and I remind myself of something important. I survived. Not because I was strong, not because I had all the answers, but because I listened to the whispers, the little voice that told me something was wrong, the instinct that made me stop swallowing those pills, the courage that made me ask for help. That voice saved my life. And if you're reading this, if you're listening to this, and something in your gut is telling you that someone you love is hurting you in small ways, even in ways that seem harmless, listen to it. You deserve safety. You deserve honesty. You deserve to be loved without conditions, without danger, without fear. And if the people in your life can't give you that, you have every right to walk away, even if they're family, especially if they're family. Because at the end of the day, the person you need to protect most is yourself. And that's not selfish. That's survival.